Hi there. This time we have an Urban Guitars Light Diffused Les Paul style guitar. These were made in 2014 and sold in conjunction with the Home Shopping Network by Keith Urban. He wanted to give a good high quality electric or acoustic guitar experience to the people for, a low price. So I would have to say that these were kind of derided at the time because, they were sold on the Home Shopping Network. But when I was 15 years old, if a quality Les Paul guitar like this copy had shown up under the Christmas tree, I would have been thrilled. So I have to admit, it's fairly well made, heavy mahogany construction, a nice maple top with a translucent black called smoke finish. Has your standard classic Les Paul style controls. Came with white, what would have been like vintage style tuners, but at some point someone's replaced these with a fairly good set of decent aftermarket tuners. The sound is very good from the pair of humbucking pickups, and my daughter's friend picked it up used at a local guitar store, had a couple of small issues, and so we'll run through what it took to make it pretty and sound as good as it does now. Stick around.
I think we'll start by stripping it down so we can buff it. That's when I find that this potentiometer is bent. So let's take the knob off and have a look how bad the damage is. And the potentiometer's tips are pinched closed. Oh, nice. So they've taken Imperial or American knobs and forced them onto 3 of the potentiometers, and one different metric knob was used that didn't have to be forced on. Okay, let me take the bridge apart. The guitar is absolutely covered in turtle wax. That's the green flaky stuff you see all over the place. Quite a bit of work to actually get it out. Let me take the ratchet and loosen up the nuts on all the potentiometers so we can loosen them up and push them through. Keith Urban actually announced his new guitar line at a show in Tampa, Florida in 2013 during his Fuse tour. Let's see, get the screws out so we can remove the access cover. Get a look at what we're working with here. And it's not badly wired. Go ahead and get the pots up out of their holes so they don't interfere with buffing the surface of the guitar. If you had purchased a Light Diffused model off the Home Shopping Network, you would have gotten a case and a personalized polishing cloth that came along with it. So, quite a deal, actually. So we'll get these up out of their holes and then put the cover back on so we can proceed to polish the guitar. It's got a fair amount of scratching on it. I think they use the personalized polishing cloth a little too much. Okay, we'll proceed to get the scratches out using a buffer. I use Mother's No. 1 polish. They're a 3-step process for this. It works really good for removing scratches. Meguiar's makes products that work fairly well for this. The buffer has a cutting pad on it, which is good for removing scratches, but you can do this by hand, a soft cloth, and quite a bit of time buffing, and you can get most scratches out of anything. So after a good wipe down, we will... Oh, had a few scratches still there, so went ahead and gave it another go. Which sometimes you have to do that. If you see several places that are scratched, just keep going back and going over until you get it fixed. Then we move to the No. 2 polish with a polishing pad with not quite as much cut to it. You're really just trying to polish out the fine scratches that are left over. And then after you finish with that, go ahead and apply some paste wax to seal and protect the finish and to help with fingerprints. Now we need to open the holes up to 3/8 of an inch to accept the American potentiometers. So we take our reamer, so as to not damage the finish on the guitar, and slowly open the hole up. Test fitting fairly regularly. It's better to have a tight fit than a hole that's too large. The Light Diffused package was apparently a really good deal for $289.95 on the Home Shopping Network, and 22,000 units of the acoustic and electric guitar were moved in 8 hours, which was a record at the time. So as we open the hole up and continue to test fit, it's a good idea to go ahead and open the hole up from the back to make sure it's even front to rear. So we'll give it a little touch from the rear. Okay, so not trying to reinvent the wheel here, we desolder the old potentiometer and the capacitor from it, and do the reverse. The electronics are fair quality and probably wouldn't have needed to be replaced if someone hadn't forced the knobs on the old stuff. So reinstall the capacitor on the new potentiometer. Never goes as easy as you want it to, but there we go. And then we'll move it over and put it back in the guitar. There we go. Get rid of the old one. And remember to be careful when you solder over the body of the guitar. Solder could be very damaging to the finish. The alligator clips are also a good idea because they help isolate the heat when you're soldering things. And they help hold the wires in place, or capacitor or potentiometer, whichever thing you need. They can be your friend when it comes to soldering. So after we solder the grounds on, then we rinse and repeat for the other 4 potentiometers. Then we'll install the nuts and lock washers from behind. We need to get our average height set. Compare it to the old ones. I actually want it to stick out just a hair further. So I gave it an adjustment. Tried to account for the size and make sure the lock washer was facing the correct direction. And then carefully put it in the case, making sure there's no wires pinched between the face and the actual potentiometer. Push it all the way through. Check to see if it looks about right. There we go. Then we install the washers and nuts. Of course, being careful not to over tighten, but you do want them tight. Like I said, make sure you're not binding in the back by holding them with your fingers. Or even have someone help you, someone that's a little stronger as you use the wrench to tighten them down. But after we get the nuts installed, we get our 1/2-inch wrench or ratchet, making sure all our wires look good, nothing's binding it from the back. Everything looks like a good install to me. Make sure they're pushed fully against the face. The Les Paul volume and tone controls are also some of the more effective. You can turn down the volume and the tone on the neck pickup and then switch over for your screaming leads on the bridge pickup. So, all right, we'll tighten the nuts down with the 1/2-inch the 1/2-inch socket. Like I said, do not crush the face of the guitar. You want them tight, very snug, so they don't come loose, but you also don't want to crush the wood of the guitar. For this next step, I needed 1500 and 3000 grit sandpaper. The edges of the inlays actually raised up above the fretboard and were very, that's the word I'm looking for, sharp. They would actually hang the string if you tried to bend across them. So very carefully, using the 1500 grit sandpaper, try to apply pressure to only the inlay as you sand. You're trying to lower the inlay down to the fretboard, not sand everything. So this takes a little bit of a touch. You have to very carefully sand on the edges of the inlay and work it down to where the inlay's flush. So you can tell if you're doing it correctly because there shouldn't be any brown accumulating on the sandpaper as you sand. There only should be the color from the inlay. After you get the inlay down to a fairly smooth and consistent texture with the 1500 grit sandpaper, you will eventually move to 3000 grit to get the rest of the scratches out of the face of the guitar. The trick with the final 3000 grit, it's like almost polishing the neck of the guitar. So you only want to go along with the grain, trying to remove the sanding scratches from going across the grain with the inlay. Very carefully. Try to work from the edge of the fret in, but I will say with 3000 grit sandpaper, you really would just be polishing the fret if you were to hit it. But the idea is to polish and sand evenly. You're not trying to make any uneven areas. It's all just a smoothing process to make it nice and even as your fingers glide over it. There was apparently glue or some other residue on the behind the nut. It made the area very coarse feeling. I really didn't like it, so using the 1500 grit sandpaper, I sanded it first across the grain to help level it, then came back and finished it with 3000. Now we move on to a little bit of oiling the neck up. They sell tons of products to oil your fretboard. I'll be the first to say that for 30 some years I have used furniture polish. People will probably freak out when they hear this, but man, Pledge is cheap. You can steal it from your mom's cabinet. It's made to protect wood. After 30 years of seeing different things tried on rosewood, it just really works well. Let it soak in for 10 to 15 minutes and wipe off the excess like I just did here. Okay, after installing a new set of strings, after we reinstalled all the miscellaneous hardware, we are going to set the neck relief, or at least check the neck relief. So you clamp the first fret or hold it with your hand or have an assistant help you. Then you also fret the guitar at the body joint and measure how far the string is from the 7th fret. You can use a feeler gauge. I find a business card works well. It is approximately 100th to 200ths thick, which is about the height that you're looking for. If you have a feeler gauge, can get a more exact measurement, but really just realize you want it lower if you like a low action, a little higher if you play hard against the strings, a lot of strumming and whatnot. So this guitar's relief was quite good, so it actually did not need a truss rod adjustment. If your guitar does need a truss rod adjustment, remember, small adjustments, quarter turn, eighth of a turn at a time, and never force a truss rod. Next we set the action or the string height. You measure it at the 12th fret. A string action ruler or a ruler with a very small increment such as 1/64 is necessary to do this. The string should be a little higher on the low or bass side and a little lower on the treble side. This guitar needed some adjustment. The bass strings were a little low, I believe, and the treble strings were a little high. So the proper method to adjust the tune-o-matic bridge is to loosen the screw to raise the bridge and tighten it to lower it. If there's a lot of tension on the strings, you may want to relax the tuning before you make the adjustment. And you tune up and recheck your measurement. Looks like the measurement's pretty good. I set the action fairly low. Most new guitar players find that easier to play. So after we've got the measurements set, we can move on to setting the intonation. You start by plucking the open string, seeing where it's in tune, and then at the 12th fret, pluck it again, and if you are sharp or flat, you adjust the intonation to match. If it is sharp, you tighten the screw, therefore lengthening the string, and it should bring it into tune at the 12th fret. If it's flat at the 12th fret, you loosen the screw, shortening the string, and do this for all 6 strings until they're in tune on the open string and at the 12th fret. Now that we're all set up and tuned up, everything reinstalled, let's see how it sounds. Light the fuse, we shall see, Mr. Urban, we shall see. Well, there you have it. Great sound and great playability for a low price. I can't recommend it more highly. Hey, if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.